Malacanang Palace was gripped by a tension that felt almost unreal. On January 17, 2026, the usual weekend calm was shattered as news vans crowded the gates, cameras ready. Something was terribly wrong. The silence from inside the palace only deepened the panic outside. Suddenly, the gates opened, not for the presidential convoy, but for a line of unmarked black vehicles, flanked by heavily armed NBI agents. The press surged forward, desperate for answers, but the agents remained silent and grim. The convoy moved through the crowd, a silhouette barely visible inside one of the vehicles. Was it the president? The crowd gasped, disbelief and fear etched on their faces. Sirens wailed as the convoy sped into Manila's streets, leaving behind a stunned, silent crowd. Within minutes, phones buzzed with a single shocking headline: President Marcos Jr. taken into custody by NBI. The news sent shockwaves across the nation. Conversation stopped as people stared at their screens, struggling to process the unthinkable. Questions flooded in. Why? By whose authority? What happens now? The highest office in the land had been breached. The future of 115 million Filipinos was suddenly unknown. The country teetered on the edge of chaos, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. The power vacuum was immediate and terrifying. No one knew what would come next. The world was about to watch the Philippines face its greatest political crisis in decades. The unthinkable had happened, and nothing would ever be the same. The footage of President Marcos Jr.'s arrest looped endlessly on every screen. He was escorted into a black SUV, surrounded by armed agents. No handcuffs, but no dignity either. His stoic face couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. Supporters at the palace gates erupted in outrage and disbelief. In the provinces, anger and confusion spread as people gathered around televisions, seeing the arrest as a political attack. The government's silence fueled wild rumors. Was this a coup, or something even bigger? At NBI headquarters, crowds of loyalists and onlookers gathered, chanting and waving flags. Riot police formed a tense barrier, the nation's divisions on full display. Inside, the process was cold and clinical. Marcos Jr.'s legal team was denied immediate access, told only that the arrest was based on an international warrant and extradition request. The word extradition sent another shockwave through the country. This was no ordinary arrest, it was a global event. The Philippines, with its fragile democracy, was plunged into darkness and uncertainty. The arrest tore open old wounds and exposed deep rifts in the national psyche. The world was watching, but for Filipinos, the crisis was painfully personal. The future of the presidency and the nation hung in the balance. No one knew what would come next. The country braced for the fallout. History was being rewritten in real time. News of Marcos Jr.'s arrest exploded across global networks, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, all breaking into regular programming. The Philippines, a key Southeast Asian nation, was suddenly a global flashpoint. World leaders scrambled for answers. Financial markets plunged. The peso collapsed in after-hours trading, and investors panicked. Diplomats from Washington to Beijing urgently sought clarity. The arrest of a sitting president was more than a domestic crisis. It threatened the balance of international relations. In Washington, the White House stayed silent, fueling speculation and anxiety. Was the US involved? Did they know? The silence was as unsettling as the chaos in Manila. The story was no longer just about the Philippines, it was about global power, alliances, and the reach of international law. The world watched, uncertain and uneasy. The crisis had become international, with consequences no one could yet predict. The Philippines was now at the center of a geopolitical storm. The stakes had never been higher. The mystery ended with a bombshell from the U.S. Department of Justice. A press release announced a multi-count federal indictment against Marcos Jr. and his associates. The charges: money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. The arrest in Manila was based on a U.S. extradition request. The U.S. Attorney General, flanked by prosecutors and FBI officials, laid out the case in a live press conference. Years of investigation had uncovered a web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and illicit transactions. Marcos Jr. was at the center, accused of secret financial deals with entities linked to the Trump Organization. Money was allegedly funneled from the Philippines into U.S. real estate and business ventures, with Marcos Jr. receiving kickbacks and political support. The indictment painted a damning picture of international corruption. The link to Donald Trump was explosive. Key figures from his business empire were named as unindicted co-conspirators. The case was part of a larger probe into post-presidency Trump dealings. This was not just about Philippine corruption, it was a global scandal reaching the highest levels of American politics. The arrest in Manila was a critical piece of a much larger puzzle. The world now saw the Philippines as ground zero for a transnational political and financial crisis. The fallout was only beginning. The Trump-Marcos connection was deeper and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The indictment revealed a partnership rooted in mutual political and financial gain. It began in 2024, as Marcos Jr. sought power and Trump's circle sought influence abroad. Shell companies linked to both camps secured inflated government contracts in the Philippines. Excess funds were laundered through a global maze, ending up in U.S. real estate and assets. In return, Trump-linked entities lobbied in Washington to benefit the Marcos administration. It was a shadow foreign policy, conducted for profit. The scandal was a profound betrayal of public trust in both nations. For the Philippines, it echoed the darkest chapters of its history. This time, the corruption was global, threatening the very integrity of the state. The Trump-Marcos nexus had become a symbol of modern transnational corruption. The economic collapse was swift and brutal. The Philippine Stock Exchange plunged, triggering an automatic halt. Investors fled, the peso hit record lows, and inflation fears soared. Businesses struggled as costs skyrocketed and foreign loans became unbearable. Construction projects outside and the economy ground to a standstill. Ordinary Filipinos faced rising prices for essentials: gasoline, bread, everything. Remittances lost value and economic security vanished overnight. The crisis hit hardest at the bottom, turning political drama into daily hardship. Credit ratings plummeted, and foreign investors warned of a mass exodus. The message was clear. The political crisis had become an economic disaster. Years of growth were at risk of being wiped out. The arrest fractured the nation. Marcos loyalists saw a conspiracy, rallying in the streets and demanding his release. Opposition groups saw a chance for justice, but feared violence and instability. The country split into two camps, each seeing the crisis through a different lens. Lawmakers were divided, some calling for impeachment, others decrying U.S. interference. Vice President Sara Duterte was caught in the middle, pressured to act but wary of the consequences. Families argued, friendships strained, and social media became a battleground. The crisis forced every Filipino to choose a side. The unity of the nation, already fragile, was breaking under the pressure. The Philippines was a house divided, its future uncertain. The diplomatic fallout was immediate. Many in Manila saw the U.S. role as a betrayal, threatening the Mutual Defense Treaty. China seized the moment, ramping up aggression in the South China Sea. Regional allies like Japan and Australia grew anxious, fearing instability. Diplomatic channels buzzed as nations urged calm and stability. The crisis exposed the fragility of alliances and the shifting balance of power in Asia. The U.S.-Philippine relationship was on the brink. The world watched as the strategic map of the region was redrawn in real time. For ordinary Filipinos, the crisis was personal. Maria, a street vendor, struggled as prices soared. This fight between powerful men, it's us who suffer. Sergeant Reyes, stationed in the West Philippine Sea, felt abandoned. Who is leading us? Our alliance feels broken. Anna, a student in Cebu, found hope in unity. We must be a nation of laws and justice. The crisis was a battle for the soul of the Philippines. The outcome would be decided not in Washington or Beijing, but in the hearts of Filipinos. The path forward was uncertain, but hope endured. In the voices of Maria, Reyes and Ana, a resilient love for country shone through. The nation faced its storm together, determined to shape a future worthy of their sacrifices. The world watched, but the story belonged to the Filipino people.